Welcome back to the PCC podcast. And today we are going to be talking about how you should get coached through perfectionism for lasting fat loss. And this podcast is really just going to be poking holes, hopefully, in your concept of what coaching is or has been for you and changing your perceptions around what you actually need to see results. Because if I'm being totally honest with you, a common scenario that I am in consistently is I am talking to someone in my DMs who has either willfully messaged me back while they have another coach. Yikes, red flag. Why are you even entertaining that? There's a reason. Or they've worked with coaches in the past and they will say something to the tune of, I'm learning a lot, or I learned a lot about my body and how to fuel it, or I saw good results when I was doing it. And, I'm learning about macros, hitting my steps, focusing on protein, fiber, water, sleep. That's a good coach. Okay. That's a good coach in the industry. And if the coach was on the even better half of the industry, they would say something like, I would say probably this is the 10% is they would say something like, the coach helped me with my stress management. I feel like I healed some of my old relationships with food, but they're still talking to me in the DMs. Why? Because they still gain the weight back, or they still feel like they're not there. Things aren't clicking yet. Why is that? Because I have to this day come across less than 5 people who have told me that their coach has helped them upgrade to a version of themselves that no longer settles, no longer wavers, no longer struggles to make the right choice because their habits are so integrated into their life that they don't have to think about being the fittest version of themselves. And to this day, I have had no one come to me saying that their coach has also integrated this into their nervous system, AKA helping their body feel safe to actually hold this upgrade and sustain it. That's the 1%. That's what we do. So coaches who understand that behavior changes more than X's and O's, right? That questions are more powerful than lectures, that the client has the answers within them and it's our job to bring them out. So there's 2 differentiating factors here between the best 10% and the 1% is that we're not here to tell anyone what to do. Like, if you were in that scenario, if you are the person that is talking to me in the DMs, and even though you like your coach and you're learning a lot, you're still pulled in this other direction, the reason is because something is missing. And you don't know what it is because you don't know what you don't know. And you hired what you thought to be an expert because they are an expert in a lot of things. They probably have a lot of credentials and schooling behind their knowledge. But what they don't understand is the intricate neuroscience and psychology of actual behavior change. Because if you don't have that, then you're going to learn a lot of stuff, but the habits aren't going to stick long term. Not every single one that you want, right? And that's what you hired a coach for, is you want to actually have change that doesn't just become a list of things that you have to do every day. It's, I have become the person that doesn't have to worry about this anymore, right? I don't want to have my mental bandwidth eaten up by this stuff. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have food noise constantly. And that requires a much higher level of a practitioner. And I can probably name 5 names in the industry that I would trust to go to that depth. And that's unfortunate, but that's the case. So with that being said, how do you actually understand where you're at with that? How do you actually understand who you're working with and what kind of skills do they have? So, for example, it's the difference between someone asking, like, I get this question a lot, is protein powder okay to have every day? It's a really common question that I get from a client who like might be hitting their protein goal, but they ask that. They're like, is it okay? And the coach typically will answer something like, yeah, as long as it's not the only protein source you consume, or as long as you have whole food sources too, or as long as you're not reliant on it, or as long as it's a good quality protein powder, right? They're giving you answers. It's like, great. Here's where my mind goes. What conversation or situation made you think about that? Did you read an article? Did someone tell you something? Tell me where did this come from? I want to know that first. Context is so important because the client could be really scared based on something that fear mongered them. They could have just had the thought on their own, right? And all of that matters because if they are asking this question from a place of fear, then me just telling them something is not going to wipe that fear out completely. But if I talk them through them talking themselves through it, they will be able to rationalize the fear. So, for example, that's step one, right? And then wherever it came from, right? We have to work together to figure out how does the answer to this question actually fit in your life? So, number one, are these sources credible? Like, how do we decide that? How do we understand if these sources are credible or not? Let's look at the context of your life. Like, you might be asking this because you want to do the right thing, but the right thing is within your life. So, if we got rid of protein powder right now, would you still know how to hit your protein goal? Would you still be consistent with it? How would your enjoyment be? Do you actually like using this protein powder because you like the taste or you like the recipes you make with it? Or are you just using it to make a means to an end because you know you need to hit your protein goal? Right. And depending on the answers to those questions, the client can therefore kind of walk themselves through like, oh, yeah, I would definitely struggle if it wasn't for protein powder. That's an area of growth. That's a learning opportunity for me to now make myself more self-sufficient versus me saying, yeah, just keep doing it. Right. They stop coaching, they stop buying the protein powder, and 6 months later, they're protein deficient again. Right. But in this situation, they build better habits because we dug. Right. Or they realize, actually, I really enjoy using this protein powder for different recipes. I feel like I would keep doing that, but I'm still going to work on, how can I have like protein powder free days or continue hitting protein in different ways because of the skill that it's going to build. Now, a lot of good coaches out there could tell you to do those things, could tell you to practice those things. But the difference is it matters so much more when the client says it. And it's truly like behavior change has to come from them. Another example, it's the difference between a client struggling to stick with their nutrition, very common. That's pretty much like 99% of my job, is figuring out what's preventing the actual sticking with it and moving them forward on that. And the coach typically adapts the target. Maybe they say like, oh, you're struggling with hitting all your macros. Let's just switch to protein and calories. It's like, that is not a bad option. But if the client doesn't understand why, it's like, we're just encouraging complacency. We're not solving the problem at hand of like, why are we not hitting it? Where's the overwhelm? Where is that coming from? What do we not understand? Right. A lot of coaches just give a lot of suggestions, meal plans, food audits, sample meals, giving them kind of advice on what their food logs are. There's a time and a place for that. But like, if that's what you're getting every single week and you still haven't changed anything, there's a problem, right? This is my favorite one. Repeating that pre-planning is key until you feel like your ears are going to burn off from hearing yourself say that. It is key. But like, so the number of clients that come to me saying like, I know I should pre-plan my macros, but like, I'm just not doing it, is like actually hilarious and kind of sad. And some coaches, like the 10%, they'll ask you what makes it hard for you to stick with it. But then when you give them the reason why, you're then met with more solutions. You're met with more fix it energy. Okay. So here's where my brain goes. Here's how we do it. So I'm going to ask what makes it difficult. So you're not sticking to your nutrition. Where is this showing up specifically? I'm going to show you on your nutrition. I'm seeing we're not sticking with it here on Saturday and here on Wednesday. What happened on these days, right? What specifically got in the way? Was it an internal issue? Was it an external issue? So internal issue, there's a lot of things that could be happening here. An external issue is like, I didn't have the tools to adapt to the situation. I just didn't know what to do. So I went with the path of least resistance. That's like the only like real external situation, but most coaches are operating there only. Internal narratives are things like, okay, I felt like maybe I could have made X, Y, and Z choice. I wasn't 100% sure on what I should do, but I figured because it couldn't be perfect, I felt like it wasn't enough. So I just went with the path of least resistance because I was feeling defeated that I didn't plan well enough for success, or I'm not going to stick with my plan. Internal issue, all or nothing thinking. I didn't adhere to my nutrition because I was feeling anxious, craving some sort of coping mechanism, looking for a distraction. These are harder to name. A lot of times people can't even point these out in hindsight. This is where we have to look for patterns of like, when is this happening? What's the external situation that's triggering this? And then we can start to name those things like emotional eating, stress eating, etc. You're perpetuating a pattern of people pleasing or martyrdom, aka neglecting your own needs for others to avoid perceived conflict. Notice the word perceived. It's like, I'm going to make dinner for everyone and I'm just going to make what I always make instead of adapting it or making it higher protein, which would actually be a very quick and easy fix, like swapping out 85-15 beef for 95-5. And no one would actually notice. But because I'm scared of people noticing and I'm scared of getting pushback or scared of what others might think or scared of any potential perceived conflict or even questions that I would then project to be conflict, I'm just not going to even face it because that sounds scary. So I'm going to sacrifice my own goals for that. So people pleasing can show up here. What I mean by like projecting questions as conflict, I have a whole episode on people pleasing, but like if your husband's eating the 95-5 beef and he's like, this tastes a little dry, like, how do we perceive that? Do we perceive that as like a genuinely curious question? Or do we perceive that as an attack, right? It's like, oh no, he's not satisfied. Oh no, I can't do that again. Or yeah, I just use 95-5 beef. Like it's a little bit leaner. It's better for my goals. Like I'm just going to be like adapting the meals in the family to be a little bit healthier for everyone. And there's going to be slight differences, but I'm going to keep it, in the realm of what we're all going to enjoy. Okay, cool. I could lose some weight too, right? That's what they're going to say. Not, I can't believe you're doing that and sacrificing our palates for your needs. like that sounds ridiculous. What, like, if your husband actually says that, we have a different problem, right? They're going to be like, cool. Like, yeah, I could totally use that. Like I could deal with a little bit of dry, like a little bit drier of beef, right? Or like, yeah, like how else can I support you? And so that's a big one. And then feelings of failure leading into a shame spiral, free state inaction. So again, I feel like I didn't do good enough. I didn't do it perfectly. I feel like I failed because I made this mistake. So now I'm spiraling. I'm frozen. I'm not taking action. Or you're overwhelmed or overstimulated by life. This can seem external, but it's actually internal. When your mental capacity is like tanked out, like you just have so much on your plate, you have like the mental load of like 17 people in your brain. It's an internal issue because we need to adapt to what can we do for the bandwidth that we have, but because we're not willing to meet ourselves where we are, that's more all or nothing thinking. But if we give ourselves contingency plans, that can be overcome. So those are a bunch of reasons why we would not adhere to our nutrition, and a lot of reasons that a lot of coaches don't go down the rabbit hole for. So, like I said, most coaches default to the one option under the external reasons and throw solutions and info dump on you. And here's a bunch of high protein foods. When in reality, the reasons we make decisions around food and self-care are extremely layered and complex. And the reality is everything I just said sounds like more work because it is. But we're focused on doing things right the first time around, which requires you to become a critical thinker, to learn how to make your own decisions, to feel empowered in the process because you're in the driver's seat. And for that reason, we are not for everyone. We are not for the woman who says, I just need someone to tell me what to do. I don't want to think about it. Because if you're there, you're going to stay stuck in the loop and you're not ready for that deeper level of change. But if you are sick of that, sick of just blindly following, not knowing why things are working or not, and feeling helpless, we are looking for the woman who wants to be in the driver's seat, wants to be empowered into that new identity. And she wants to be in a version of herself that no longer has those questions, lingering thoughts, food noise, because that's the byproduct of confidence and self-assurance. And it's the long road because it's the right road. So I know that can be hard to hear, and I'm sure a lot of things in this episode could have been hard to hear, but that's how you should be getting coached through your perfectionism for lasting fat loss. And if you had prior coaches before, I promise you they were well-intentioned. I mean, no shade, but there are a lot of people that don't have the skill set to actually coach behavior change working in this industry because the barrier to entry is very, very low. I've been there. That was a past version of me. I've made those mistakes. And that's why I'm working on correcting them now and raising the standard of the industry up with us. Okay. So, with all that being said, obviously, if you are interested in working with us, we are here and we are ready and we are excited to work with you through any obstacles that you have. But if not, that is okay. You can keep listening to the podcast and we'll be here when you're ready. But go ahead and subscribe in the meantime, because that way you can keep getting the wisdom and take action on your own to the extent that you can. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening. I know that your attention is your most valuable resource you could give us. So we'll see you back here in the next episode.